Manazi Piper, and joining me today is Ndumiso Zulu, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Social Investments at Old Mutual. Thank you and welcome.
Hi, Nazi. Thank you for having me.
So, can you walk us through your journey from UCT, then to ABSA, and then to private equity? And now you're leading social investments at Old Mutual. How was that journey for you?
Interesting, difficult, and everything in between. The story starts a little bit before UCT. I went to a typical township school, and I was fortunate enough to secure a bursary that took me to UCT. I probably wouldn't be sitting here today if it wasn't for that. So after graduation, I joined IDC, or the Industrial Development Corporation of South Africa, to do CA training. So I was pursuing the route of becoming a chartered accountant, did 3 years there of structured practical training and some board exams in between. And after qualifying, I stayed there for another 2 years in the venture capital space. After which, I then wanted to see how the other half lives. I joined Barclays Investment Bank. Started out in back office, made my way up all the way to front office, or a client facing role where you deal directly with clients. And as part of that journey, I was fortunate to have been exposed to the entire sort of cycle of funding. So, right from how does a small business raise funding, to a big corporate, to a conglomerate, all the way up to governments. I always joke that people don't know that governments borrow money. They don't have money, they borrow, and then they charge you a night tax, and that's how they pay, and on the cycle goes. So from there, I then joined the DBSA again, which is another development funding institution. I was there for a period of almost exactly 1 year. Then the opportunity to become CFO for Masisizane Fund within the Greater Old Mutual came about. So that's how I ended up here. And as it happened, my then CEO resigned. I was asked to act in his stead. Later on, the company then decided to make that position permanent. And then about a year later, we then formed what we call the Social Investment Cluster, the objective of which was really integrating some of Old Mutual's social impact initiatives, like Masisizane Fund, which focuses on supporting SMEs with business funding and business support, the OMSD Fund, which does something similar with a narrower focus, as well as the group CSI function, or corporate social investments. And really, the objective there was, how do we bring these things together so that we are able to tell a coherent and unified Old Mutual social impact story?
Yeah, I mean, sounds like you have quite an extensive CV, very, very long. So I'm sure with that comes a lot of experience and exposure to different type of lessons. So what are some of important lessons that you have learned working in the investment and private banking sector?
Sure. So I think one of the things that really stood out for me was around the importance of teamwork. If you compare it to being in school, it's just you and the exam paper. If you study, you pass. So everything is within your control. As soon as you get to the working environment, and it doesn't matter whether it's in banking, whether it's in retail, whether it's in government, there's one common theme. It's working with other people who may think like you, who may not think like you, who may not like you, but it doesn't matter. The objective is what that particular company organization is to achieve, and you have a specific role to play in that. So you really need to be good and adept at working with others and being able to function within a team, whether you're in a leadership role, whether you are in a supporting role, and sometimes the two are actually intertwined. You might not be even able to tell, am I a leader or am I an enabler? It doesn't matter. You have a role to play in a team setting. You need to be very clear on what that role is and what your contribution to the team is. I think that was the one lesson. The other lesson, it's never too soon to lead. And I think people very early on in their careers struggle with that bit. You have an idea, but you don't think you have the right to voice it out. You don't think you are senior enough to be able to have an opinion, or maybe you don't think you get paid enough to be able to do that. The getting paid part might be true, but the part about actually having your voice heard is critical. I think there's actually a lot of people in a lot of rooms with great ideas that never actually find life in their voices because they are too intimidated to do it, or they are waiting for someone else to give them permission to do it. And really, my advice, and this is from personal experience, don't wait to be asked, don't wait to be given permission. If you have an idea, voice that idea. If it's not the right idea, you learn from it. And that's how you learn. I think sometimes people get so afraid of making mistakes at the risk of actually not learning.
Success doesn't happen overnight. What were some of your big influences, or should I say mentors, if I
Hmm.
can use that word, to get you to where you are today?
Sure. Oh, that's a very long list, and I might get into trouble for not counting all of them. Interestingly, and I always say this, for me, women have probably been the biggest contributors to where I find myself today. Right from the beginning, my mother was my biggest influence. I remember she started teaching me to read and write before I started school. And over the years, she inspired me in so many ways. And even when I eventually got into corporate, some of my biggest supporters were women, people who saw potential in me before I even knew I had said potential. I remember when I finished articles early on in my career, it was a lady by the name of Meryl Mamatuba who said to me, "When you finish articles, come talk to me. Don't take a job anywhere else." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I did. And that's how I secured my first job straight after finishing articles. And even my time in investment banking, I remember I used to report to a lady called Lisa Eustace. To this day, I still cite some of the lessons she taught me along the way. And I remember one of the things she taught me was, your problem is you know too much and you want people to know that you know too much. I'm like, what do you mean? She says, when you communicate, particularly to senior leadership, they don't have time. So get to the point very quickly. If they have a question, they'll ask the question. And I think that changed my entire outlook and approach to communicating. And I see people, even now, uh, they want to tell you everything you know so that you don't ask them any questions. When somebody asks you a question, it doesn't mean that your job is not good enough. They simply want you to elaborate. So she was very influential in that. Similarly, my time here at Oak Mutual, in fact, now that I think about it, all my bosses at Oak Mutual have always been women. And once again, when I joined here, I was the CFO. I never imagined myself in a CEO position. It was the lady that I was reporting to at the time. She actually called me and asked, "The CEO vacancy has just gone up. I see you haven't applied. Why?" It's like, I just got here. Uh, but also, sort of in the way I envisioned my career, I'd never imagined myself sort of following that career trajectory. So she was very influential in terms of how I ended up here. And after she left, I reported to yet another lady who is my current boss, Deliver Ross. Uh, Brilliant mind, speaks her mind. Uh, but is also very clear. I think if you had to describe it in one word, it'll probably be clarity. She's obsessed with clarity, in getting it, in providing it. Sometimes you don't want to hear it, but you'll get it either way. And that's really shaped the way I view myself as a leader, but also just my overall approach to leadership. But also, I mean, there have been a lot of men along the way. Before I get into trouble for not mentioning them, I had a mentor, a guy by the name of John Muller. who was my mentor during my CA articles, one of the hardest working people I've ever seen. I blame him for subsequently working until 2 in the morning because that was second nature to him, and a lot more people that we don't even have time to count. And really, the upshot is um, I am here because of the people that came before me, the people that made a deliberate choice to actually back me and support me. And I think everyone who finds themselves in a leadership position, if you get to the end of your journey and you can pinpoint one or two or five or 20 people that you contributed towards their growth, then you probably wasted your time.
I love that. I really, really aspire to that. Um, you are obviously very successful. Maybe
Debatable.
you probably don't view yourself as that, but
Mm.
if you wanted to obtain something else other than the success you have now, what would that be? Like, what does success look like for you?
Sure. It's probably the hardest question you've asked me today. So I think for me, given where I am in my life now, I ask myself, what's the most important job I'll ever do? And it has nothing to do with my career. It's actually being a father. And the scariest thing is that I'm a father to a girl, and I come from a male dominated family. I had one sister and like six brothers. So I would have been very comfortable having my first child being a son. I think that obviously didn't happen. So I look at my daughter now, she's 2.5 years, is already telling me no. And I suspect it's only going to get worse. Her name is Kanya. And I look at her and wonder what kind of world I and my generation are going to pass down to her. We know in the past the world has been, for lack of a better word, not so kind to women. So, what am I doing to make it better for the generation that comes after? But if I zoom out of my own sort of individual set of circumstances, what is the difference that I'm going to leave behind in the world I've lived in? One of my favorite quotes um, goes something like, "What we do for ourselves dies with us, but what we do for others lives forever. It is eternal." So when my time is done, whether as a leader, whether as a human being, what is that one thing I would have done that will echo through the ages long before people have already forgotten that I ever existed? How is the world better off uh, given that I was once here? Uh, and it's a very scary question to ask oneself. I haven't come up with the answer yet, but I'm working on it. But to me, success is how you leave the world better than you found it. And it has very little to do with yourself as an individual or your own family, but it's really thinking about everyone else. Uh, so when I can pinpoint what my contribution towards making a better world is, that would be success to me.
I think you're already on your path there. Just judging by your long CV, you know. So, what does it take to balance commercial returns with social impact in today's corporate environment?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we find ourselves in a world where, if you think about corporate social responsibility and how and its evolution over time, it started out as something that corporates did because it made them look good, it made them feel good. And I think it's transitioned over time to something that we actually must do, whether you're looking at our impact on the environment, whether you're looking at the impact on the communities in which we operate. So, if you look at a country like South Africa, particularly our history around mining, you know the stories. These big corporates come into town, we build these mines, and then we left them as they are. What does that mean for the community that remains behind? Um, and again, whether you're in financial services like Old Mutual, what is the meaningful contribution that you are making in your own communities? And I think that's important because You've got to realize and accept that for you as a business to thrive and grow and succeed, the communities in which you operate must also grow and thrive and succeed. Because if they don't grow, then you're not going to grow. Because where do you get your customers, right? And that's my view of the world. Where do you get your customers? Where do you get your employees? In the very communities in which you operate. So I think that's what necessitated that shift from some for CSR to be something that we don't do because we can into something that we must do because our survival as businesses actually depends on it, if you think about it. So balancing the two becomes easier because you don't see them as alternatives. It's not either or. It's actually two things that are very complementary. Your communities and your overall environment must be better off for you to be better off and to succeed.
Mm. That's very, very, very good. I know that it takes a lot to balance the two, but I like what Old Mutual is already doing when it comes to focusing on the community as well as the bottom line.
Yeah.
Um, what does it take? I'm sorry, how do you see your role as a financial institution in supporting SMEs, SMMEs, and entrepreneurs in South Africa?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's the easy part, which is giving money. And people always laugh when I say that because they'll tell you it's not easy to get money. But to me, giving money is easy in that it's a binary decision.
Yeah.
You either get the money or you don't get the money. So, really, what you need to figure out what tips the scales in my favor, or what do I need to show the person or persons with resources to want to give them to me instead of somebody else, right? But I think where it becomes more substantive, it's in a country like ours that is a classic 80-20. How do we make sure that the top 20% don't have access to everything and the other 80 is left to almost try and survive on breadcrumbs? And I think that's the real question I always ask myself being in the space because that's where real impact is. Uh, it's when you are able to do something that changes the lives of the majority that you can say you're being impactful. Because if you do that, if you factor in the multiplier effect, that's how you move a country, a society from point A to point B being the better part. So one of the things we do for SMEs, in addition to providing them business funding, is what we call business support or capacity building. So, starting a business is one thing, running a business is another. Raising funding is easy. Like I said, you go to someone, you say, "This is my business plan, this is what I'm going to do with it." They give you the money. But then once you have that money, what do you do with it? Right? But also, how do you grow the business? Because starting a business, growing a business, sustaining a business are very different skill set. When is the right time to scale? When is the right time for me as the founder of the business to actually say, I think I've done my part. It's now time for somebody else to take over the reins, which is almost always difficult. Nobody wants to let go of their baby, as it were. So we do that by way of capacitating them either through partnerships or mentorships with like minded individuals, making sure that they have access to technology, which some small businesses typically struggle with because of the cost barriers. So, really, we try to provide a holistic solution that sets up businesses for success as opposed to just giving them money. Because if you just give money and stop there, it's almost like a flip of a coin. I give you money and hope you're going to make a success of it.
Mm.
Or I can give you the money and then walk the journey with you
Mm.
towards helping you, assisting you to actually make a success of it. So that's our approach.
Yeah. And it sounds like a more sustainable approach. But you might have some critics who say corporate South Africa has this tick box when it comes
Mm,
to CSI. So how are you working to make sure that investments create real measurable change and it's not just a tick box in the
yeah.
company?
And look, I don't think that criticism is wholly unfounded. Um, because if you then dismiss it out of hand, you are effectively saying there's nothing that needs to change. There needs to be. I think one of the things we do need to admit to ourselves is that things like BE, things like your ESD funds are tied in some way or form to, for example, earning BE points. And I think that's where things like the tick box exercise come from. I give you money, I get my BE points, I get my level one status. It means I can do business with government and other businesses, right? But in reality, to my earlier point about CSR actually being integral to the success story of the business, that's how you want to approach it. If SMEs grow and thrive, they provide employment, and we know where we are in terms of employment in this country. If you're a young person, it's on the wrong side of 60%, which is something that should scare everybody in this country. So, by supporting SMEs, you're not just supporting those individual businesses, but you are supporting an entire ecosystem that can then thrive and grow because of the support that you provide. And then there's the multiplier effect. You start moving society from one place to another, which is a better place, which is something I don't think as a country we've gotten it right yet. But I also think it's important to caveat that by saying it is not something that corporates can do on a standalone basis any more than government can do it on their own, and certainly not communities. So, how do you bring all these parties together to actually start driving towards this one very big common goal? Uh, that to me is the question.
Mm. Just to have one final question for you. What's your long term vision when it comes to changing corporate social responsibility in corporates? And how do you plan on using your platform
Mm.
to create that sort of change?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for me, certainly in the corporate space, I would like to play a role in ushering almost this paradigm shift in terms of how we view social impact as businesses. I think we are hardwired to compete with each other, and in a pure commercial setting, that makes all the sense in the world. But I think if you want to be impactful, if you want to change society, you have a much better chance of doing that if you collaborate, if you work together, even with people that are your natural competition. Because the objective is not our individual gain, the objective is for society to gain. So, to me, I think if I can play a part in ushering this new way of approaching development, of approaching CSR, uh, that to me would be success. That to me would be a win. And I think we are still some way from being able to achieve that. But we got to start, right? The best time to plant a tree was yesterday. The next one is today.
I love it. Okay. Thank you so much for such an insightful conversation. It's been an honor having a conversation with you. And yeah, wishing you all the best in your journey.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for having me and for taking it easy on me, the question.